and love coach, relationship. That's why we're here today. So I have about 4 speakers that are going to speak today. 2 are here right now. This is Amy Hall from Ohio, America. So she's flown all the way here to speak. Hi, I love it. Vernon Harris, South End. He's going to speak.
Properly, guys. Come on.
Brown. She's in. This is South London.
Yeah.
South London.
No, West London.
West London. So West London. And then one more is on the way. So we'll just start. So before we start, it's about relationship. It's parent, love yourself. It sounds a funny title, but you get to see it as we get through the discussion, and each speaker says a little bit.
So, good evening everybody. My name's Ekra Brown and I am the Head of Inclusion at West London School. I also worked in therapeutic settings for a lot of our children, and I do parental work. So I work with the so-called difficult parents, whatever that means, because I don't know, I've yet to know what that means. I also have 4 stepchildren, and part of my work is around helping parents to understand what it is to parent. And I think a lot of people think that parenting is this magic thing that everybody needs to know how to do and things like that. And it's one of those things that it's a series of relationships. It's relationships you've had in your past, you continue to have, relationships with your parents, grandparents and family, because we are the dream of all our ancestors and our kids are the formation of that. And so what we then need to learn how to do is, like Sis Noreen was saying, love yourself, because you are role modelling what you want them to see. I think for a lot of our people, it's more a case of saying and doing something completely different, and that confuses our kids. And also learning to understand that who we are is significant and is special when society doesn't recognise that. And it's not enough to love yourself, but to understand who you are is probably more important than loving yourself. And having a sense of you as an individual, but you as a collective as well. And knowing that you come from something great. And celebrating that. And asking the relevant questions and saying, who am I? Who are my grandparents? Where did they come from? What is my language? What is my place of birth? Who is me? Who am I? And having that hunger to find that out, because I think a lot of our young people are struggling with that but don't know how to ask. And also we struggle with that because I think we take this mentality of it takes a village, but we don't understand the village is just for us as much as it is for the children, because the village is the patchwork that you look at to see, am I doing this right? Does it make sense? I know we talk a lot about men going to the barber shop, women going to the hairdressers, but we have them kind of conversations because we're comfortable and we get something out of it, but we also have people that are like-minded people that will challenge us on our thoughts, but also sort of evaluate what we're doing and tell us if it's the right thing, if it's the wrong thing, but from a place of love. And correction from a place of love is the best thing, because what it does is it makes you feel that you are somebody and you have a voice. A lot of us nowadays don't feel like we have a voice. My job right now, being the head of inclusion, is to give our kids a voice, because a lot of our kids within the educational system don't feel like they have a voice, and the educational system really isn't for them. It doesn't teach them about themselves, it doesn't teach our history, it doesn't teach our understanding, it doesn't express our culture. We do Black History Week. I don't know what that is, because I'm black all the time. But that thing of trying to placate us rather than understand that we are special. You know, I know for me, I have an auntie who's Jamaican and we've traced our history, but I'm Ghanaian, I was born in Ghana, but we have that history and we have genetics and we have those things. So when we sit, we talk. And it's such a nice thing, and I feel like I'm part of something, so my kids feel like they're part of something. And one of the things that we don't do enough is come together like this. And I think I said that last time, because when you look at our people, we are great. We've got the most colourful dialects of people with hair textures, movement. You see our people on a dance floor, they're just magic. You know, in all our spaces, we are great. And so if after all these years people have tried to dumb us down and we're still that vibrant, that tells you something about who we are. And we need to express that with our kids. But the balance to that is also being able to challenge our kids to have an identity that does fit in the society that they live in. A lot of our kids are struggling now to be, they feel like rebels, but they don't know what the cause is, but they know that something is wrong and they want to fix it. And we don't do a good job of explaining to them what that means. So there's a lot of confusion. But us as parents as well, we're trying to do it by ourselves. And it's difficult to do it by yourself. Anything's difficult to do it by yourself. Even if you get it wrong and you're a group of people, as long as you trust those people, they will help you, they will support you. It's not something that you have to, it's not a magic wand, it's nothing new, we're not reinventing the wheel. Our grandparents did it. The only difference now is they have Instagram and Snapchat and all that, but the fundamentals are the same. And actually, my work I do now is with teenagers, because I think when they're young and they're sweet and they're cute, they're lovely. But when they get to an age where they feel that they know everything because they can Google it or they can look on there, that doesn't mean they don't need us, it means they need us more. Because they're getting lots of information, but critical thinking isn't something that is taught in school. So they're overwhelmed with information, they need us more, but they'll do that thing like, no, I'm alright, I don't need you. Teenage life, I'm in my bedroom, I'm on the computer and things like that. But what I say that we're all a village is that it may not be you as a parent, it may be an uncle or an auntie or one of your nieces or nephews that has a better connection. So when you do that, then you have a word in your child's ear. And when you have that, there are friends that will tell them, do this, do that, do this. But sometimes as life evolves, they find out, actually, my friend is probably about the same age as I am, knows about, doesn't really know, hasn't lived, doesn't have life experience. So actually maybe what mum and dad and auntie and uncle are saying is probably true. Let me vibe with that. And there's a lot of that, but I think sometimes we as parents get frustrated. They're just not listening. This kid's head is hard. Or they're just like, if they don't hear, they will feel. And we do that thing and I implore you to not do that. They need you, they really do. They just don't know how to ask for it. Because even as adults, a lot of us are still trying to figure out who we are. So imagine as a child with that information. And when I say child, anything younger than your parent is still a child, you're still learning, you know? And so we have to give ourselves grace because we're going to make mistakes, but understand that you didn't create the child. God, whoever you believe in, created that child. So that child is a manifestation of every bit of ancestry you have. So they're great already. All you're doing is molding. You're not creating. So if you make a mistake, it's okay. Because if you learn from that mistake and as you go forward, you're moving, that's the best thing. Have sort of a sense of enjoyment. Enjoy the experience. Be there. Be alive to it. Don't sort of like, because the time you won't get back and it'll go like that. I saw a sister here earlier with her little baby. And I'm looking at that baby and it's like, he's the cutest thing, but he's going to be 15, 16, 17, like that. And so it's everybody around has the right to support you and love you, and it should be an expectation of you. Don't feel that you have to do everything yourself. You know, if you want to educate your child a certain way, that is your right. But understand that there's people around you that may question that. That doesn't mean what you're doing is wrong. It means that you have to justify what you're doing to yourself. If you believe that to be right, keep doing what you're doing. It's no right or wrong. Nobody can tell you. I know people read lots of books and go on YouTube and things like that. There's nothing wrong with that. But trust your own instinct. It's there for a reason. And add the bits that you want to add and throw away the bits that you want to throw away. You know, my mum will want to advise me on what I should do and things like that. Uncles want to advise how to raise sons and that. That's not my speciality. So I leave it, when they're a certain age, leave it to them because they're the men. They know how to raise men. And there's things like that. There's back and forth and things that I don't agree. Sometimes I feel that my husband's a bit tough on the boys, but I have to step back because that's not my space. I don't know how to be a man. Likewise, when it comes to the girls and there's certain aspects of that, they have to step back. So it's like, even if I don't sort of conform to this thing that if you're a single parent, you're some way lacking. No, if you're a single parent, you still have a family. That village is still there. As long as that village is there, you're good. You know, and there's always that sense of trying to fulfill who you are because you're the biggest role model to your kid. As long as what you're saying is what you're doing, you're good. Because when they see that, they have a sense of, that's what I want to be, that's who I want to aspire to be. But oftentimes we are very critical of ourselves, and we want to tell our kids do this, do that, but then we're not following it through. And then it looks like, well, why aren't you following it through? Either you don't trust it or you're lying to me. When you get into that area with your kid, it's a problem because it's very, very difficult to come back. That's when other people can get in and start raising your kids. And that is a problem that can be solved when you're in a community. It doesn't have to be your own blood. It can be really good friends. It can be people that are your neighbours and things like that. But as long as you understand that you can't do it by yourself. When you get that and you understand who you are and your faults, because one thing that your kids will definitely do is hold up a mirror to all the things that you thought you got right up until this point, and they will challenge you on that. And it's how you deal with that, how you understand that, that decides whether you're a good parent or not. Because everybody's trying, as long as you do your best. It's the same thing we tell the kids, make your mistakes, learn from them, but do your best. There's no exam at the end of this. What you get is a human being that is great within society, that can move forward and do those things, and they're going to make mistakes. It's okay, it's not a reflection of your parenting. It's a reflection of society and going into it and understanding where you fit. It's okay. I think a lot of parents are like, oh, my kid got into trouble, they did this, they did that. As long as they learned from it and you supported them with it, you did your job. Because sometimes they're going to come off the rails, even if you did everything right. Because it's just a path for them, but if you can support them to come back, then you're a great parent. And I'll just leave it at that, because I could go on myself.
So I'll just take a minute to say I had an experience. So this is my third event. And every time I put one on, I get challenged. You get to see the mirror. Mm-hmm. So my daughter, who she doesn't mind, as a daughter, and she was talking to her, and she just wasn't getting it. She's saying, "You don't understand me. You don't understand me." And so I stayed out of it. Then she said, "Grandma, you deal with her." So I spoke to her, and can I say what I need to say? Yeah. So basically, her mother got cross, and she told her to write it all down, what she heard. And I saw my daughter get very quiet, and I said, "What did she write?" She said, "You read it." When I read it, I was on the floor. I was just laughing, because I'm thinking, what child would write that? We couldn't do that to our parents. We couldn't write that. So it was my turn now. So I said, "Why did you write it?" And she kept back-chatting. So she said, "I don't understand what back-chatting." So I said, "Stop back-chatting your mother." I said, "I don't understand what back-chatting." So I said, "Look at Google, go into Google." So she looked, she said, she's still crying. You don't understand me. You don't understand me. I don't know what back-chat. I said, so I started to lose it now. I'm thinking, you do know what back-chatting is, because I've heard you before and you understand. Why are you saying it? So in the end I thought, no, I can't deal with this. So I put her back to mother. My son came in and he tried to do the uncle bit, as you said. I don't understand. And she just kept saying she didn't understand. So I just went up to my bed. I thought, what is going on? So then he comes up and said, "What's going on?" He goes, "Mum, you decided to do parenting, so you've got to feel it and see what it's like to be a parent. Maybe you've forgotten." And so after a few days I realised that I left it and I went to the other daughter and the same thing was happening. So I questioned myself, and then I realised it's the need to be heard. I have a need to be heard, and I get very upset when I'm not heard. So what's the difference between me and her? She's just a different age. She wants to be heard. She never got the impression that we heard her. So she was very upset, and she just stuck to that. You don't understand me. Basically, she said, "I want to be heard," and we're not. We're just telling her to do this, do that, and that. So I think what you said was very useful.
No, I think for a lot of us, that sense of we're an authority, because we as a people don't really feel heard. And so then we tend to project that onto our kids when we're like, "We're going to discipline you, you're going to be respectful," and things like that, rather than actually listening to what they're saying. Because when you listen, you learn to understand how they process information. So rather than talking at them all the time, actually if you understand how they process information, you can talk to them a lot less, but a lot more directly. That way you don't get frustrated and they understand where you're coming from. Because I think we have this tendency to believe that when a kid is a certain age, just because they're cognitive, like they can backchat and stuff that they understand. No, they've seen it somewhere, or they've seen other kids do it, or be disrespectful, and they've seen that kid's got away with it, so they're now doing it. It doesn't mean that their intention is to be rude, but we'll check the rudeness and not deal with what caused it. And so then they continue to be confused, we continue to get angry, because we see our kids as a representation of how we parent. So if your kid is rude, it's because you're a bad parent. Not that your kid is trying to have a voice and you kind of like need to pull them away. Yes, you have to check the rudeness when you're amongst people, but when you go home, have the conversation. Why did you say that? What were you trying to say? Why didn't I understand it? And things like that. And really listen to what they're saying. Be present. Not that they're just talking and they're younger than me, so they should respect me. Because we have elders that feel that way, and we know what it was like as children, and it wasn't a nice feeling. But at the same time, you do have to balance that with the discipline. Kids have information, but they may not understand what that information means. Kids say lots of things. Like, I have to write instance when a kid comes and tells me something for safeguarding reason, but I write it in the words of the kid and I ask the question, what do you mean by that? Because there's a lot of words in this language that are very interchangeable, and what they're saying may not be what you're hearing, but we need to be able to do that, because it's not that we're not listening, you're just not hearing the depth of what they're trying to say to you. And so we need to do a lot better at that, myself included.
Thank you.
So what if the child is backchatting,
Yeah.
and you're saying don't backchat, and they're still backchatting? Do you see, when we was growing up, we was kind of like, you have to be seen and not heard. So when they're backchatting and they explain to them what backchatting is, like, how do you kind of get them to, like, how do you discipline them if they're being rude and they're still backchatting?
I guess it depends where you are. If you're in a space publicly and they're backchatting, then me personally, I'll shut it down then. But you still have to have the conversation when you go home, because what backchatting looks like in different spaces is very different. If your kid goes to school and somebody is checking your kid and it's unfair, you want your kid to have the voice to say, no, you're talking to me disrespectfully, or you're being rude to me or whatever, and be able to come and tell you. So you don't want to shut down their avenue of citing that something's wrong and challenging it. But at the same time, they're not your peer. They're your child, you brought them into the world, so they need to respect you. So there's ways that you can challenge, but you have to do it respectfully. So that's the way that I would.
How would you do it respectfully, and how would you challenge?
So for me, okay, my kids are grown, so my son's like 24, 27, and even now there are times when I say do something, it's like, oh, but wife, who are you talking to? Like, okay. Say what you want to say. So he's like, okay, give me 5 minutes. Let me go. He'll go and chill in his room. He'll come back and he'll formulate an argument and do that. This is what, when they're young, we need to teach them that. There's nothing wrong with having an opinion, nothing. And we need to respect that, and you need to get your respect from other people. It's how you formulate it and who you talk to. The way you talk to your friends is not the way you talk to uncle and auntie and mum and dad. They're not on the same level. There's levels to this. And so it's like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just a curiosity. You talk about respect. The child needs to respect you. But does that work in reverse?
Absolutely. But the thing about it is that you can't come from a place of respect is always earned, as far as I'm concerned. Whenever I see kids, I saw a kid the other day and his mum was like, oh, this is auntie, go and hug auntie. And the kid was hesitant. And the parent was like, no, go and hug. And I sort of like, it wasn't my place at that time, but afterwards I asked, like, why is it, it's like, it's how, and I said, but the kid doesn't feel comfortable. Have they met before? No, they haven't met before. And I'm like, but they don't have a relationship, but you'll do stranger danger and then go and say, so it's confusion, so you have to be very clear. And where there's a grey area, have the conversation to understand what they understand, and then put in the blanks and stuff. That's what parenting is, because you're going to get to a point where they're going to need you less and less, because if you've done the groundwork and you've built the foundation, building the house brick by brick is easy. If the foundation isn't solid, then it will just get mudslide and then it's a mess, and then you can redo it, but it's harder. So I think we need to do that thing, especially with our kids, where we find time to talk to them on a regular basis. Because when it gets to the teenage years, if you've done the work in the earlier years, it's part of life. So they'll chat to you and things like that, but oftentimes we allow them to play, and then when they get to teenagers, it's like, oh, we want to talk to them. and they're not used to it, and it's like, why? I don't need that now. I needed it then, and you weren't there. You were there, but you just didn't exercise that right. You still have it, and you can get it. It's just more work to get access to it. Just like that.
Vernon Harris is the next speaker.
Hi, my name is Vernon Harris, and I'm known as an intuitive transformational therapist because I use my intuition to help people deal with their fears, worries, and anxieties, challenges that they have to do. I use hypnosis, NLP, psychotherapy, and various tools like that to help people deal with what's going on in their mind and getting back to where they need to be. What I'm here to talk about is about being aware and being aware of the language we use with our children. Now, most people, when a woman gets pregnant, most of us don't think that the child is actually being affected by what's happening to that woman. And it's the biggest mistake adults make. The instant that child is conceived, everything that happens to that woman, around that woman, affects that child. That child is a sponge from the day it's conceived. Most people don't actually even realize that you hit a woman, you hit the child. You abuse a woman, you abuse the child. And it hits into that child, it stays in that child. That's why a lot of children come out with a lot of trauma, a lot of problems right out of the womb. And the reason I know that is because when I work with people and I've taken them back when they first heard which one of the parents didn't want them, it's in the womb. A child didn't recognize it then, but it knows it's unwanted. And this is the thing that when we come out, we use language that children don't understand. Whereas adult, I know what the word don't means, but a child doesn't recognize that. But the unconscious mind don't recognize it, and we still use it. How many of you have actually said to your child, don't spill that drink? What does that child do? Instantly say, spill that drink, because the unconscious side of the mind only hears spill that drink. The word don't exist. It does not exist in the subconscious mind. And one of the things is the subconscious mind operates 95% of every human being behavior. The unconscious mind and the brain up here only controls 5% of our behavior. And the unconscious mind operates our breathing. When you go to sleep at night, you continue breathing yourself consciously, or does it just happen? You get in your car, once you get used to a thing, it's a habit. Do you ever think about operating the gears and levers and steering wheel, or do you just do it? This is what a lot of us don't realize. Now, coming back to what this young lady was talking about earlier on. In the wild, the lioness does the hunting. Have you ever noticed the cubs go with it? What happens to the cubs? They sit there and they watch, they observe. Does the mother teach them how to hunt? Yes, because they're observing everything the mother's doing. Just like this lady said, our children observe us. They don't hear what we say, they hear what we do. Sounds crazy, but that's how it is. That's how a lioness teaches its cub how to hunt. And that's how we teach our children how to behave. Believe it or not, it sounds crazy, but it's true. My children are all grown up now. Big people. And I taught them from a very young age, if they do their best, they will always be where they need to be. Now they always turn to me when they have a challenge. Why? Because I was always there to give them the best support when they needed it. That's what a lot of parents don't do. I didn't grow up that way. I came to this country when I was 9 years old. It was the biggest shock of my life. Short pair of trousers, short sleeve shirt in September. You can imagine what my knees were doing. They knocked like crazy. If I could have got back on the boat and gone back home, I would have gone. Because I left a hot country to come to a cold climate. That was a shock to my system. Not only that, I went back up north, where it's even colder. And when I was hibernating for the winter, and that affected my life for a lot of years. I didn't actually stop needing my mother's approval until I was 50. That is crazy. And those of you who've come from the Caribbean as children, after being left at home, we don't actually realize the damage that happens to a child, because as far as that child's concerned, it's been deserted, it's been left behind, it's been ignored, it's been abandoned. And all those things aren't recognized. I've had to learn to work through those things. I went to see a hypnotherapist in 75, a time when black people did not go to see hypnotherapists. It was an unheard of situation because I knew something wasn't right with me. That's what made me become a hypnotherapist, psychotherapist, because I know if the mind is right, then your life is right. And this lady really did a nice talk, because I love what you said. You really hit the nail on the head. We have to become aware of our language. What we say to our children is so important. I got a phone call when I was working one day. My wife said, oh, some tablets I put in a drawer right at the back of one of those. She said, the children had been in there and taken them out. They thought it was sweets. Now you can imagine the effect that's having on me, because they could have actually done harm to themselves. The thing is, when I went home, did I beat them? Not really. I sat them down and asked them why. What made them go in that drawer and actually take out those, which was right at the very back. They were just looking around. So I went in, looked in it, and they found those. They took them. So I said, what should I do with you now? I asked them what punishment they should have. And they said I should beat them. That sounds crazy, but they said it. And I simply went 1, 2, and then after that's my one. I said, I don't trust you guys anymore. For 1 week, my oldest daughter, all she ever said to his mom for the whole week, drove her crazy. Daddy don't trust me anymore. My wife was nuts by the time she was finished, but the effect of that, she never actually did it again, neither did them. So sometimes you have to find ways to deal with children when they're stepping out of line. Ways that, and there's nothing wrong. Talk to a child, explain why and what you're doing. Because at some point they will understand that. It'll come across to them. Sometimes we're so caught up in our own pain that we put that pain on that child. And that is the biggest thing a lot of us do. It doesn't matter, like Liz said, there is no book out there that was created to say, this is how you're a parent. How I parent, my parenting went totally literally the opposite of my mom's. Because I did not want my children to feel what I felt. It doesn't mean to say I got it right. But right now, I love my children and they love me. So I know I must have got something right. And they're all still out there doing their thing. The point is, if your child is doing better than you know you've got something right. If your child's in a dark place, you know that you put that child there because it's your guidance that they followed, whether you believe it or not. It's because we don't always see what we're doing. That's why people need coaches. That's why people need other people outside to be looking and saying, you know that didn't look like, that didn't come off right. Noreen comes to me quite often. She calls me her accountability buddy. Why? Because she'll come and say something to me and says, well, have you thought about looking at it this way? Oh, I never thought about that. Because we all see things from, when we're looking from the outside looking in, we see what other people don't see. And that's why so many businessmen have coaches. Some of them have 2 or 3. Coaching and supporting, being supported by others. When I came from the Caribbean, I lived in a village. Everybody was there. They either looked after you or they chastised you. That was the village situation. I'm not saying it was right. Sometimes it wasn't. But everybody was there, either support you, looked after you. You're going to get into trouble. if somebody in the village was there to see you, because they would actually look after you. And this is what we have to learn to do. Look after our own. Families are now split apart. So therefore it's so much more difficult. And we need to start becoming aware. I thought I needed to be my siblings' big brother, because I was the oldest. I learned a lot later age that I had my own family. I had my children, and my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. So I had my own family. I didn't need my brothers and sisters to be my family. They're my siblings, but I have my children, and that's my circle. And I need to keep my circle together. I use language that they understand. And sometimes we remember some get into arguments. We just says, oh, they ain't going to do that anymore. We just cut it. We do not go down that road. If we disagree with each other, we break it. Doesn't break our friendship. We respect each other's views and feelings. A lot of parents don't. So all I'm saying is, be aware of your language. I would get rid of the word don't, shouldn't, couldn't, mustn't. They're all positive and negative combined. The mind don't recognize them. The main mind, the subconscious mind, do not recognize words that's joined together as a positive and a negative. And we say we understand what we mean, but the unconscious mind doesn't understand it at all. And the unconscious mind is a child. Children are sponges right up to the age of 7. Up to the age of 7, everything that happens, they just soak it up, because they've got no logical differentiation. Even though, yes, they can say yes and no, and all of a sudden, they can't make sense of it in the unconscious. So everything you do around a child especially between the age of 0 to 5, it's like having a sponge and you're pouring water into it, and it just goes in and in and in. Nothing comes out. That's a child. The subconscious mind is a child. It has no way of knowing wrong or right, good or bad. It just knows that's how it is, and that's what it is. So that, I hope, will help you guys to understand what you need to do around your children from a very young age, from conception. That is when we need to start to nurture our child, the child. I hope that helps.
We'll have a discussion afterwards, but Beverly Frey is the next speaker, and she's going to be talking about money and relationship.
So I was here in January,
Yeah.
and Noreen has just asked me again to read the piece of, I say it's a piece of spoken word, but it's actually listening to Vernon. It actually came out of some more healing. So last year, October, I turned 60, but the August, my mum turned 90. My mum studied here at Goldsmiths College. She did social work, she did child psychology. And so for me, I understood that through my childhood, I was offered the opportunity to talk about my feelings, to express myself one-to-one, because it was just me and my mum. My parents were separated. But so much happened in my childhood that I covered up, that I hid, didn't tell my mum, because obviously she was working with young people who were struggling, societal struggles, relationship struggles, family struggles. So I kind of felt, as a young person, teenager, I'll hold it all, I'll deal with it, and I'll be my own social worker, my own mentor. But as I grew up and the different jobs and things that I did, I kind of realised that, just like Vernon was saying, you need to hand it over to someone else. You have to let go, you have to heal, and sometimes in the healing you've got to forgive the other person, even though you don't want to, but more importantly, the person that you have to heal and forgive more is yourself. So last year, this is what came to me when I was asked about what my ego was doing to me. Ego, self-love, letting go, healing. I see you. Do you see me? So who am I when I hide? Who am I when I hide from myself? My ego says, I'll protect you. Be good. Oh, I'm so good. Be, for Beverly, be good and care. What was I running from? What was I running to? So what did I make up about my ego going forward? Dad not showing up, mum working, grandma taking care of me. I was lonely, with dolls and toys for company. I needed to play. I needed to love. I needed affection. I needed company. I needed a father figure. I needed a mother figure. I needed to care for others. I needed to laugh. But ego said, no one loves you. I'm ugly. No one loves me. I'm XYZ. No one loves me. I can't do that. No one loves me. The perpetrator saw what I needed and mirrored it back to me. Ego said, search for love. And with that, pain, violation, submission. Ego said, be good. Shut up. I shut up. I shut my mouth. I stopped feeling the need to be me. With ego hiding deep down inside my soul, it's hiding itself from itself, covering over the cracks and wounds of a lifetime, greatly creating tension from the outside control. Protection, invisible, upset. Who am I to do this, do that, say this, go here, stand there? Ego was all about protecting myself, yourself, ourselves. Don't give in. Don't submit. Ego, stop suppressing me. Stop controlling me. Break the shackles that bind me. Through my tears, I can see the naked. I can see with the naked eye. I can see clearly. Clarity of mind helps the light shine through. No boundaries, no restrictions. Total synergy of self, total vulnerability. Time to do myself justice. Go on that journey. Find understanding of self. Truth and trust. Find my true identity. Clarity. Expansion. These are all in our wheel of life. Our soul value. Find the love in you. Find your voice. The time is now. Love is the reality of everything. Reach out in love. Touch in love. Feel love. Thank you. So I just wanted to express that. And one of the things that I do, I'm a life and money breakthrough coach. But what last year led me to do, it led me to more self-discovery about what a people's relationship is with money. For many peoples, it's deeper than we think. It's deeper than we think. Money is spiritual. And because many of us have that pain, that we are not healing, feeling fully abundant, feeling that you are worthy, feeling that you are deserving of everything that you were created to be, can be difficult. So what I want you all to do today is I'd like you all to stand. And I'd like you to, if you can, reach and touch somebody's hand. And I want us all to say out loud, I am worthy.
I am worthy
Because I am here.
because I am here.
I am deserving
I am deserving
of all abundance,
of all abundance,
all light energy,
all light energy,
and God's grace and mercy.
and God's grace and mercy.
And as you stand there, I want you to feel the heat of everybody in this room. We are a people on a healing journey. We have to wake up every day and we have to say, I feel grateful. It might seem small, it might be abundant beyond measure, but you have to get up every day and you have to say, I'm grateful, I am here. What is my purpose? You all know that you're here for a purpose, right? I can't hear you.
Yes.
I want you to say it again.
Yes.
If you know what that purpose is and you've been playing small, I want you to wake up to the fact that the time is now. Wake up to the fact that the time is now. It's not tomorrow, it's now. Whatever you have inside of you, if you're prepared to take a leap of faith on yourself and step into it, all of the abundance that you've been waiting for is ready for you to receive it. But you've got to believe. Do you believe?
Yes.
I can't hear you.
Yes.
Yes.
If you believe, when you get home tonight, I want you to write that vision. How many of you here have a written vision? Oh wow, I love it. When was the last time you looked at it? This morning. This morning. Yes, this morning. This morning. And before you go to bed tonight, you look at it again. We are all accountable in this room to each other. We're all accountable to each other. And with this energy, if you believe it, we believe it for you. If you feel that you need support, there are loads of people who will back you. As Vernon said, we will help to hold you accountable to your vision. Now the thing is with money, it is like a relationship. If you're not loving it good, it's gonna hurt you bad. Yeah? If you're not loving your relationship with money, your relationship with money is everything to do with your relationship with yourself. Wake up to the fact that we are deserving of much more than we believe. Because guess what? That's the mindset that was given to us. But actually that's not where we're coming from. And it definitely won't be for many of us where we're going to. So stand tall, like soldiers. Yeah, we've been there, we've seen that, and we're here for a purpose.
Hi, thank you for having me here, and thank you for the invite, Noreen. It was like really perfect timing. And so, my name is Amy Hall. I am from Toledo, Ohio. I am in the highway, actually I'm in the highway construction business. So I just sold asphalt paving and milling highway construction company about a month ago. And about 6 months ago, I bought a bridge building company, right? So I am like one women of color in this business, right? So it's a great place for me to be in. I'm also a life coach, mother of 3 boys, so my life is like kind of crazy. But my day job, working in the highway construction company, paving roads, and life coaching really mirrored each other, right? Because life coaching was really about helping people pave the way in their life back home. And so now that I own a bridge company and I'm building bridges, now am I not only helping people go home, but I'm helping people bridge the gap between who you are today and who you're really born to be. And so that's what I love about coaching, that none of us are broken. None of us need to be fixed. We just need to remember who we are, who we're born as, right? Because there's so many layers and things that our parents do, and they call it love, and like our families do, and they call it helping, and our schools do, and we call it conformity, and all of these things which help make us who we are, but sometimes we lose and forget who we're really born to be. And that's what I love about coaching and about the opportunity of being here. And when I think about parenting, my idea of parenting has completely changed over the years. So 3 boys, my life is crazy, right? So everything was a sporting event in my house. Everything was testosterone driven. So whoever was biggest, strongest, fastest, like that ruled and trumped everything in my house. And so with me, and I'm a single parent, so with me being a single parent, I had to be the dominant one, right? I'm your mother. And and the kids always laughed at me because when we were out in public, that's when they always decide they want to shadow box in line somewhere. And so they start boxing with each other. And my response to them was, don't make me take you to the bathroom, right? Or don't embarrass me. But what I realized was, as I got older, is that I am really less teaching my children about themselves, and they're teaching me about me. Because children have this amazing ability to push every button in our lives. And how do they know to push those buttons? They don't, because they're just being who they are, right? But it triggers something in us. So I have learned that, parenting isn't really just about me showing up in my children's life and helping them do these things a certain way, but it's really helping them remember who they are and discovering who I am in the process. So parenting is really about parenting myself. And I learned this like over and over and every day. And parenting myself has really taken like so many different avenues. So I'll give you an example. So the other day, I have a 28-year-old, a 25-year-old, and a 19-year-old. And my 19-year-old often says what Noreen's granddaughter says, "You're not hearing me." And when I try to share something like, "Hey, you should really do this," and it's like, wall comes up, everybody becomes very defensive because it feels like an attack. It feels like an attack, like I'm telling you that what you're doing is wrong and that you need to do it this way because I obviously am the mom who, right, knows the best. But what I've learned is that if I ask my child, hey, do you mind if I share this with you? I have a thought. Do you mind if I share it with you? The walls go down. He opens up because now he doesn't feel like he has to defend his decision or his position. And he opens up and he's able to hear what I have to say. Now, there's a lot of parents who don't feel that they need to ask their child permission to talk to them, right? Because I'm the adult. But my question is, do we want the child to get the information? And then it becomes about the child. But when we are concerned about the child not wanting us to ask a question, we don't feel like we should have to do that, then it becomes about us, right? And our egos get in the way of connecting with the child. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter how my child hears the message as long as he hears it. And as long as it sinks in a little bit, right? And as long as you plant the seed to help that child understand or who he or she is. And so if asking permission that, hey, do you mind if I share this with you? Because they're talking, hey, I have a thought. Do you mind if I share it with you? The defenses come down. The walls come down. And now you're engaging as person to person. And not as I'm the parent, you're the child. So it completely changes that dynamic. Another thing I've learned, I was driving one day and I realized my boys are going to most likely marry a woman like me. Right? Son, your daughters are gonna marry, fathers, your daughters are gonna marry you. He was like, oh no! And so, we really need to start thinking about those types of things and about the fact that our daughters as mothers are going to emulate some aspect of ourselves. We are the role model, so they are going to portray us as adults. And our sons are going to marry us as women. And as fathers, your daughters will marry you. And as sons, your sons will emulate you as a father. And so it behooves us to ask ourselves and to look at ourselves and say, do I want my son to marry me? How I am today? Would I want me as a daughter-in-law? And I said, hell yeah, I want to be a daughter-in-law. But it's worth an ask. Because chances are there's some part of us that they will marry. And there's some part of us that's going to show up. And to your point, kids hear you and they see you, right? So the hear becomes the action. So they hear your action and they hear what you say. And if your actions and your words aren't in alignment, then they become null and void. And you don't hold that space. But chances are they will then do that too. Because it will just be because I was raised that way, right? And so how many of us, I have vowed that I would never be my mother, right? And I am my mother in quite a few ways, right? And I'm my father as well. I'm my father in quite a few ways. But I really always wanted it to be her strengths, her good things. And then there's a couple of times when I found myself being my mom at her not good times. And I had to check myself because, once again, parenting isn't just about what I give my children, what I can tell my children. Parenting is about me, and I need to discover who I am. I heard there's a lady named Dr. Shafali Sabari. She wrote a book called Conscious Parenting, right? And she was talking about one of the parents came and said, I want my son to be like the best basketball player or the best in his life. He needs to be the best. And so Dr. Savari said, what are you great at? And he was like, well, not really that much. But I want my son to be all that I'm not. And so she says, well, why don't you pay less attention to your son's greatness and start becoming great yourself and really hone in on your greatness. And then your son will see your greatness and want to be great like you. And so oftentimes, and especially when I was raised, we were raised very differently now than our children, right? And and Noreen talked about her granddaughter about, you're not hearing me, you're not hearing me. And so how many times us as kids were upset with our parents, and you go to your room and you're just like, they didn't even listen to me and they don't understand me. And we then return as adults and do the same thing to our children, right? We expect them to be a certain way, and we expect them to do these things. And because we are so caught up in being a good parent and coming off as a good parent, and especially in public as a good parent, that we miss the opportunity of communication with our children, because we so often think that as parents we know everything, and as children they know nothing. But that's not true. Children know a lot, but they just need help guiding it. And we can learn a lot from children if we get out of our way thinking we know everything, and to understanding that at the end of the day we are all co-creating this world in which we live in very wonderfully. And now, not saying, don't misunderstand what I'm saying, that parents and kids we're all the same. We're not, right? So parents have tons of years of experience on life, and there are so many things that we have. However, children are really born knowing who they are. And so often children are here to help us learn ourselves. And in learning ourselves, then we begin to have this mutual exchange of relationship with our children. And it becomes this natural flow versus I'm the boss and you know nothing. It becomes we help instill in them who they are by learning who we are, right? The buttons they push are our buttons. It's our insecurities. It's our things that trigger us. It's our things that we need healing. I took a word out of my conversation with my children. At probably about 10 or 15 years ago, I stopped telling them how disappointed I am in them when they do stuff. I just stopped. And about how you upset me, I stopped. Because I realized it is not their job to make me happy. It is not. It is not their job. They are being themselves. But it is not their job. My happiness should not be dependent on my children. My happiness comes from here. And my relationship with the divine, with God, with my higher self. And then I'm able to put that out to them and help them create the relationship of who they are and who they're meant to be as young men in the world, and for you all have daughters, young women in the world. But when I realized that they are just being themselves, and it's my issue that I have, that I don't want to be embarrassed because my children are acting foolish in the line. Not saying that they should act foolish, right? Because there's a time and a place. You want to act foolish at home, but not out. But I can't have my life and my emotional state based on what my children do, because then I will be like this. I will be a crazy lady all day, because my children will never be who I think they should be. They will always be who they're born to be. And that's my job as a parent, to help bring that out of them, to put them in environments in which when we plant the seeds, they get watered and they start growing. And as they grow, I'm the strong oak tree, right? And they're the acorns. So we plant them so then they can come up, and then they can drop acorns, and then they can plant them and they can continue on. But I'm so grateful for my children, because they have taught me more about me than I could have ever learned in any other classroom setting. And I think once we start to change the idea of parent and the hierarchy of parent, that we can then take a step back and we can hear our children and we can help really raise them to be these independent, strong, like human beings that they are meant to be, because that's why they're born. And that is our jobs as parents, to emulate the person who our children will marry one day, or our children will be one day. And so, and really that is all I was going to talk about today.
You actually reminded me of so many things that's happened to me along the way. I married my mom twice. Seriously,
Yes.
The two women I married, when I analysed it after we parted company, I realised I'd married my mom twice. I even started writing up about it. The beautiful thing is, like you said about children, my second daughter, she one day said to me, Daddy, if I take nothing else from you, I will take the fact that you never give up. And I can't have a better thing said to me than my children saying that if I don't take anything else from you, is that because I never give up on life no matter what happened to me. And listening to Amy today, she reminded me of so many of the things my children have taught me. And that's why I said my children to come to me prefer than going to their mothers. Not because I'm any better than their mothers, but I listen. I don't judge. And I will guide them. They bring me in if they're having a difficulty between their partners, I'm the one they call. And I sit there being the one that says, oh, now you can talk and now you can talk. And that to me shows the respect my children and their partners have to me, because sometimes it's their partners that says, you better bring your dad in. And that's why I believe our children learn from our examples. Yeah. Everything we do, from conception right through until they're 7, 8, 9, 10, they soak it up like a sponge. And this is where we have to learn to become ourselves, become aware of ourselves. I learned so much from my children after our life. And I'm now learning from my grandchildren as well. Trust me, even they can give you a hard time.
And I think for me, what was really important when you were saying that about the word disappointed, I was a young mother and I was a single parent at a time that was very unacceptable. So all I had actually when I said I'm pregnant is everybody, I remember being in a meeting of 20 people telling me how disappointed they had been and how upset they had been, and you should have got married, you were singing in the church, and everybody was just throwing what I had disappointed them with. But at that point I was a child of faith, and I remember speaking to my child in the tummy and saying, actually, you were going to be a testimony, you were never going to be a disappointment, you will not experience. And I started talking to her every single day, because it was all about, her conception was all about everybody's disappointment.
Yes.
I then started speaking to her while she was in her tummy, and I literally would talk to her. Every time I prayed, I would speak what she is. And for me, when you don't mirror children as disappointment, when she was born, I then decided, I didn't even know I was consciously parenting. I just knew the experience it had pre her conception, she was never going to have that experience. And I remember it took me about 10 days to name her, because I wanted to be very careful the name I give her, because it had to be a name that told her she was blessed. I didn't really care at that point what the world said. I wasn't even bothered that the father wasn't there. I just knew my child's going to be blessed and she will grow up blessed. And funny enough, my mom decided she was going to name her Stephanie, a character who was quite wild in one of the shows we used to watch. And I'm like, why are you doing this? This is that character is quite wild in the. It used to be Rich Also Cry, and Stephanie was quite wild, and I'm like, why are you naming her character from? And that lady is quite wild. But then I said to her, you know what? I said, God, listen, I have a sense of humor. I'm going to allow people to name her that. But if you're true to the words that I said, this child will not be wild. She will be something people marvel at. The power of growing along and consciously being along your child. At one point, I started thinking my daughter was abnormal because everyone would say to me, she's a teenager, she's this, she's not going through this, she's not going through that, she's not going. You go to a place, you'd go to school, all you hear is good, good, good. And then I decided, I said, is there anything this girl does that's really wrong? Yeah. I need to pull her up. I even saying to the teachers, you need to pull her up because I can't be coming here and you're telling me she's this, she's that, she's that. But then I read a Bible verse that said, what you speak to your child's life, they become. So I would say to her, you're going to be kind, you're going to be this, you're going to be... Because all I had was rejection, rejection, rejection. It got to a place when we used to have Christmas gatherings, I would disappear. Because at the end of every Christmas, I knew what was coming. As a young lady, I would be sat down. But as I kept speaking, what I started discovering is even though I was getting all the negative as to how I'd got her, the family started coming around her and showing her so much love. So I got confused and I'm like, I don't really get it. I'm getting so much stick, but you all have so much love for this child, and it's those things you say around her. And she grew up with so much love. I can say today, she's a testimony to what I'm here, she's in Greenwich, doing something for young people who've gone through so much. So every Friday she drives from Kent to Greenwich to be alongside young people who've gone through a lot. It wasn't something I told her to do. She decided, why am I sharing this testimony? I'm sharing this testimony as parents to say, you've got the power to bless your children regardless. And I have had experiences of a lot of young people who've come through my hands, who've been in the law, who've gone through a lot, especially boys. And one of the things I do is I don't ask them what they've gone through. I just start speaking life into them. And somehow that mindset pushes them on. Why am I saying that? I'm saying this to encourage any parent who's older, any parent who's young, that say what you want your child to be, regardless of how the world describes them, regardless of the behavior. Just speak life into your situations and into your children. Even when they're wrong, I would say, I'm really upset that you've done this, but I still know there's a beautiful girl in you. I still know the great person you are, but we need to correct this. But this doesn't take away your greatness. And sometimes it would sit really wrong with people. However, she once said to me, I asked her, why are you crying so much about university? And she said to me, my sadness about going to university is like many children. My home has been so safe. I don't know if I'll find that in the world. And that was a moment, I remember kneeling down and saying to God, thank you, because that's what you taught me. And that's how powerful it can be when you're a parent who parents consciously, because when your child feels like going away isn't safe, then you know that they found safety, and it's just something I'd encourage you to do.
Thank you.
So, my nephew Elliot is not on the list, but he wanted to say a few words, and off the back of.
Yeah. Well, my auntie wanted me to say some words.
I did.
Yeah. But I will kindly oblige. Everyone said it all, but I am a father of 3. This is my wife. We share 3 children, 1 from a previous relationship, so a 13-year-old, we have a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old. I work for a charity that supports men and boys through transitional moments during their lives. So in the charity, I am part of the fathers team. So I support young fathers in specifically Southwark and Lewisham, for them to be as active and involved in their children's lives as possible, for them to have a voice, for them to advocate on their behalf, to make them be seen in a world where they're not seen and they're not heard and when they're not valued. Where can I start? My 13-year-old really taught me when I had him that parenting ain't easy, because prior to him, I hated my dad. I hated him. I make no bones about that. I did not like him. And the reason I didn't like him was because I was meant to love him and see him as the king, but he didn't model the behavior that allowed me to see him in that way. And I could see that from that age. I could see it from how those around him, my uncles, my aunts, my cousins, didn't respect him, and that made me feel a way because my dad is not who he's supposed to be. And I never wanted to be like that. When I had Elijah at 13, it allowed me to be like, you know what, Dad? I forgive you. This shit ain't easy. You're still a bit of a whatever, but I've got a bit of grace now because I just, alright, there ain't a book. I don't know what your life was like. You've lived a different life from me, but you're still my dad. So many things that people have said I just don't want to repeat them, but one thing that has stuck out to me is having Elijah, having Asani, Heru and Inaya. They have taught me all that. They have shown me who I am, and the way that I've allowed myself to connect with my children and children in general is they have awoken and reminded me of who I am, and reminded me that to connect with them is to be my inner self. So that inner child that you have within you, I just tap into that, and that is how that allows me to see the world on their level and connect with them. I say that to say everyone should try to tap into that. Sometimes it can be difficult in a world that tells us we must be this, that and the other. We must be Mr. Authority, Mrs. Authority, we must be 100 million things at once, but we have the capability to be 100 million things at once. A brother of mine, not a biological brother, when asked, and I always have to credit him when he says this, when asked what being a man means to him and what masculinity means to him, he gave the response, and I've taken that on. It means being everything and anything that I need to be at any given time. So that means that my role as a father, as a husband, is not fixated and not rigid. So that allows me, when it's time to play and wrestle with the children, it's time to play and wrestle. When it's time to be stern and tell you off, it's time to be stern and tell you off. I'm not bound by those rigid boundaries, and I try as much as I can to be fluid in order to give them the best that they can, because in me giving the best that they can, they give it back to me. They fill me up. I will say also, have grace with yourselves. Allow yourself to get things wrong. Allow yourself to not beat yourself up. We live in a world where the dominant societal structure is not conducive to people of our kind. If you can imagine a computer and you have an operating system, Windows, or if you've got a Mac, I don't know what the Mac one is, I'm not rich yet, but we're getting it. But there's an operating system, and because it's so all-encompassing, we think that this is the only way. This is not the only way. There is another way. There are many other ways, but this dominant Eurocentric Western world has dictated to us that this is how you must do things, and when you don't fit in, you feel a certain way. But we're not meant to fit in. We wasn't born to fit in. We was not born to fit in. We have the ability to fit in because we are fluid, we are like the chameleon, and we can, when we need to be green, we're green, when we need to be red, we're red. But when we're trying to fit in so much, it is at odds with us, and our experience from today, from 20 years, from 100 years, from 500 years back, and for going forward for a little while, is testament to the fact that we are at odds with that. Part of the work that I do, we deliver a course, an expectant father's course. So we do that on Saturdays in the hospitals, because parenthood is something that there is no book for, and society has kind of push men into a role where, you know what, men just go and get the money, women do the nurturing. But this social economic climate and the way things are changing, one money can't survive one family. So we have to do a bit of both, and we have to be fluid. So this course really empowers men to prepare for the changes that will come and the arrival of their new child. That's just some of the great works that we do. My journey into this work, I won't even say it started. My journey started before I was born, and I say that because in this course, one of the midwives confirmed to me and said this to me, and it proved to me that it's not just hocus pocus, gobbledygook, spiritual, miracle stuff. She said, and this is a qualified midwife, she said, when women are born, they have the eggs of every child that will ever come forth. So you have the eggs of your daughters inside you already. So that means you are the egg of the first that was already here. So when I say that my journey on this began from way back then, that's when it began. Like, it's just manifested and coming into this physical form right now. But things happen in cycles. The managing director of the organisation that I work for right now was the father's worker that I was first introduced to, that guided me along this path. And he guided me because that was what was called of him. But my first son Elijah, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been on this path, because through him allowed me to awaken parts of me, skills, essence within me that I didn't know. But through being a dad, the confidence grew. I'll wrap it up by just saying, be easy with yourself, be silly at times, just connect with your children, connect with yourself, and be curious, because it is the curiosity that has always guided me, and that's allowed me to find things out about myself, about my children, about the world. Just always be curious. All when the world is telling you to be like this, have that curious mind, because it is the curiosity that will allow you to find out X, Y, and Z. And then you can take what makes sense, leave what don't make sense, but always still be curious about what don't make sense, because it don't make sense right now, might come back to you and it might make sense later. I'll leave it there and we can do the comment.
For our speakers, the floor is now open to have discussion. So anything that you want to ask, yeah, we just have an open discussion now about yourself. Yeah, we have time for it. Anyone wants to ask a question?
So if you know any young dads, 30 and under, in Lewisham or Southwark, contact me. I can help them a little bit.
I'll take the name of your organisation.
Yeah. So connect with me afterwards and do all of that stuff.
So I wanted to ask, with conscious parenting and sorry. When it comes to discipline, because I've been looking at some stuff and I'm seeing how some parents are more use the approach of telling their kids the reason why they shouldn't do something instead of saying don't do this. What other methods would you say would be good to use with disciplining your child?
Coming to me?
To everyone, yeah.
I would say your kids have to understand that anything in life, for every action, there is a consequence, whether it's good or bad, right? And consequences can be neutral, I mean, but they have to really understand that if you do this, then here's what you're going to expect. If you do this, then this is what you'll expect. And so it really takes the bad and the good out of it. It's just what they want to experience. The choice, and it gives them the ability, to your point, it gives them the ability to learn how to make choices for themselves, right? So we want our children to be able to make choices, especially as adults, because how many adults do we know that when you ask them a question, they're like, I don't really know.
That's
right? And they don't know because they haven't developed the skill set needed to have the confidence in the choice you make, right? And so my thing is, my children have to understand, If you want to sneak out of the house, that's fine. But when you come back, here's what you can expect. It's going to be this, this, this. If you get a speeding ticket and you get stopped, the police are going to write you a ticket. You will then have to pay for your ticket, right? And so, or if you get A's in school and you do well, when you go on to the university, chances are you will get a scholarship. And then your schooling will be paid for. That's a consequence of getting good grades. So it just depends on who you want to be. You want to do life the easy way, or you want to do life the hard way? And really the choice is yours. Because they're going to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
They're going to do what they want to do. And I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of my friends. I was fortunate enough my parents didn't really hit me because I was scared. My dad was really, really tall. And he would just have to say, "Hey, me," and I'm like, "Oh." So I didn't have that. But then I had an older son who, when I'd say, "Joseph," he was like, "What?" You know? So his consequence initially was, "Don't make me take you to the bathroom." And then we go, then we go to the bathroom and then you get it. And he didn't like it. But then I changed as a parent. And then I decided, because I didn't like the way I felt when I did that, so I'm like, why am I doing this? Because I'm in the moment, and they always say, don't hit your kids when you're angry. We're always angry when we hit our kids, right? We are. I mean, that's just, we are. And so, but then I created the space, and I said, okay, you do that again, here's what you can expect. Choice is yours.
I think I agree with that, and I think that fundamentally it's like you and the father of your child initially have to come to an understanding, because what kids really struggle with is confusion.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to say, this is what we're doing together. It doesn't have to be exact, but there needs to be a blueprint, so that either one of you is there. If there's only one of you, you're still coming from that same place, because when kids understand things, then you scaffold life for them, so that when you take the scaffolding away, they know how to build. You know, for example, my nephew is, well, he's 5 now. When he was 3 or 4, he used to do the building block thing.
Yeah.
And then he would do it, and there's somewhere you could see that he's going to put this one, and it's going to fall, and like his mum would be like, "Oh no, we have to stop it from falling." I said, "No, let it fall, and watch what he does." And then it would fall. Then he'd look at you like it fell, because obviously his mum had been there the whole time. It fall, and I go, "Okay, we're going to build it." And then you're looking like, "Okay, so we can build, okay." And then you go and build. And I think life is like that. And also when you have lots of children, you have to understand they're all different. So the way you manage them is different. The consequence and the understanding should marry. So at different stages in life, I think when you get to like the teenage stage, you start to have the conversations, and you're less directive and more sort of understanding and communicative, so that they understand, because your job is to be able to step away and for them to be able to do the thing, because they understand the fundamentals and how to process the information. So that's what you're doing, if that makes sense. So the older they get, the more, that's why you have to keep having the conversation, because what you understand then influences what you put in. And slowly, because if you don't understand your kids, you may go down a path where you're trying to be disciplined and they're still doing the wrong thing, and you think it's just because they're hard-headed and they don't want to learn. It's like, it's not that. It's that the communication and the consequence are not vibrating on the same frequency, and they don't get it. And so it might come across in behaviour. And a lot of times when I work in schools, that's why I see the behaviour is negative. It's telling you, I don't understand, I'm frustrated, and this is how I can show you, because I don't have the words to explain. But what we do is then we deal with the behaviour, and that negativity surfaces, where we could say, actually, take a breath. Okay, what you're doing, this isn't good. I don't like the behaviour. That's nothing to do with you. The behaviour is not going to help you, but actually you are smart, so you tell me what you understand and I'll fill in the gaps. And that's basically what you're doing as you go along.
So as they grow with the stages of development, 1, 2, you've already started this process quite early for them. And babies are quite intuitive. They understand even when they're being cheeky, and you go, "Ah," and when you talk to them talk to him like he gets it sometimes, even when, and when you start it early, because for me, being a single parent and a young mom, because of all the surrounding I got, I understood very quickly that I had to start teaching my child boundaries and routines, even if I didn't understand if she was getting it. And I think, I suppose, because I couldn't talk to a lot of people, I would talk to my child and say, I'm really frustrated. I want to help you. And I didn't really actually understand how deep that bond was until she started growing up. And sometimes I would just have to look at her and she'd be like, okay, I'm doing something wrong. And in my lifetime, I'm about 40, I think I've only touched my daughter once on the and I saw her reaction, and I remember writing an apology letter to her because I was the way it made me feel. But because you start the boundaries and routines so early, you almost have a language you communicate to your child with. And like Ekwa is saying, as the child grows, you then adapt the languages, you then adapt the systems. I don't think I've ever been in a point where we've been like this, which is, she's now 20. We've had discussions where we both ended up crying. So we start not hearing each other, and then we go, but we'll cry because I hear you when I hear. But that was because I had nobody else to turn to, so I started doing that at that age. So just understand, your child has an ability in them that is so powerful from a very young age, and start doing that now and then adapt the systems as they grow.
So, like the lady says, if you want a child to learn something, start now. Start at between the age of 0 to 5. That's when you want, even before that, because a lot of people play music while the child's in the womb. The child's come out as a musician. Okay. The thing I talk about is the subconscious mind, which is the 95% controller. That is at its highest right at this point in time. So anything you actually say to that child right now becomes the child. And this is what I was talking about. The same thing this lady proved, that as she talked to that child understood. It didn't know what logically what it meant out here, but from its own understanding, because all children come in already pre-programmed with every. That's why my granddaughter, when she was a baby, could pick up a tablet. She didn't need her mum's instructions. She was able to operate the tablet by herself at age 2. They're already programmed, ready for it. Because everything we do here gets sent back to where we come from, and all our children are programmed with it. That's why technology don't bother them. If you're an adult having problems with dealing with technology, give it to your kids. They'll run rings around you with this. So you talk about discipline. Discipline is something that, if you focus on it, it becomes a challenge. Don't focus on discipline. Focus on what you want that child to become. The more you focus on what you want that child to become, the more that child will become it. That lady's proved it. And it's as simple as that. If you want that child to behave, talk to it. And it will give you back in return. So I'm at an age now where I'm 72 years young. My son's 50. When I walk out and I introduce my son to people, they look at me and they look at him. They don't know when did I start. So I know that somewhere along the line I've got good genes, but I've also looked after myself. I've also learned to love myself unconditionally. I look in that mirror and I love that person in the mirror. Because you know what, if I don't love him, nobody's going to love me. I grew up being told, love mom, love dad, love my brothers, love my sisters, love everybody else, but nobody ever told me to love me. And that's the biggest challenge we have, especially as an Afro-Caribbean person. I was never told to love her. I was never told that I'm worthy of love. I've had to learn that along the way. The one thing I made sure that my children do is that I love them. And because I love them, they love themselves. That was me teaching them to love themselves because I love them. And this is what they taught me to love myself. But this is what I'm saying. We need to look at ourselves because our children are reflections of us. Whatever we put into them, they'll reflect it back to us. And sometimes it's frustrating. I went on a course once and I was on the course for a month and then this guy joined the course. And every time he's opened his mouth, my fist went like that. I wanted to punch his mouth and shut his mouth with my fist. And I said to my supervisor, why don't that guy shut his mouth? I just want to punch him. And my supervisor says, where is that in you? You want some reaction? That's not in me. I went home the weekend and I sat down and I thought like, oh my God. He was pointing out something that I thought I dealt with. And this is what children do to you. They point out things that you need to deal with. Not them. It's not their problem, it's your problem. And that's why that's how I work with myself. That's how I work with my clients. I get them to look at what it is they're dealing with. And actually, can I also just say, forgiveness isn't about the other person. Most of us think, I have to forgive you, I have to forgive you. No. I have to forgive me because they don't care about me forgiving them. Most people that you want to say, the forgiveness is you. Forgive yourself for being the person you are. And the instant you let go, you deal with that forgiveness in you, you'd be surprised those persons disappear out of your life. This is just it. We forget to look at ourselves. We forget to know who we are. Our children is a mirror image for us to look at. So, and like the lady said, blame the behavior, not the child. It's something that a lot of businesses are now coming to an understanding. Right, son, right, you've done something this, well, you know what, that is not right. But let's look at what we could do about it. And this is sometimes what as parents we don't see. If a child's doing something wrong, okay, that behavior is not quite right. You realize that this can happen. But okay, so what's the difference that you could have done differently? So start showing children how they can do things differently, how they can behave differently. Start explaining why what they're doing isn't right.
And affirm them at the end of that. Always remind them that when you've corrected a child, that was the other thing I did, because I grew up in an environment where I think I had a love you from my mom at 30 something, about 35. That was a very strange thing, and I would always say to my daughter, I don't like what you've done. And we went through it, but at the end of that, I'd still say, but I still love you though. I don't like this behavior. And I would consciously make sure I woke up, and I have a routine even today when she comes home, like she's coming on Easter, I would go and open her curtains for her. She's in bed and go like, I love you, and get out. Yeah. But never realized what that means as parents, and also affirm yourself as a parent. Sometimes I would say, okay, I've really made a mess as a parent, but I love you for trying.
Yeah.
It is right. It's just actually letting the child know that it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to screw up. That doesn't mean to say that you've got to stay that way, you've got to behave that way. I had the two choices when I was growing up. I could have been a criminal, or I could have gone down. Seriously, I had two pathways. But because of the way my mom dealt with it, I chose the path I'm on. You know, the other people I used to hang around with, well, I won't go into where they are, but I didn't want to be there. So that's...
Can I add, the modern day, what we generally think of discipline is correcting bad behaviour. But because I'm a nerd, I like to find the root meaning of where words come from.
Yeah.
And that's what my son would also do. He mirrors me and we're just in sync like that.
Yeah.
But the root word means, it comes from disciplinarians, the Latin word for pupil. We all know what pupils are, not these, but students. So it's showing you that their thinking at the time was about learning. So what you're basically trying to do with your child is help them with their learning. So you're setting boundaries about, okay, this is good, this is bad, or whatever you want to put it. But back to what you said as in regards to certain parents are trying to explain things to children. That's because when I'm doing work and I'm meeting social workers and this, that and the fourth and local authorities, there is a thing called child-centered parenting. So it's about focusing on the child, not the parent. Most parents, when we're in conflict and we're in issues, is because we're focusing on ourselves. So trying to explain things to your child is putting yourself in the child's eyes and understanding that they need to understand. We were all children once, and I guarantee all of us felt that there were adults that we were smarter than. I knew that I was smarter than many of the adults around me. So you can imagine how the child feels that stepping into their shoes, putting yourself on their level, explaining things to them, and not just telling them because you're the dad or the mum, you must do this because this. Because not who are you, yes, you're their guardian, but you get things wrong. And in their little brain, that don't make sense sometimes. So make it make sense to them. Respect them. And that's one of the main things that I learned was when I started to have my children, it was, yes, I'm their father, but they're not mine. They are children and humans in of themselves. They are individuals. It's just my job to guide them to get the most out of life. But they're not mine. They're not my possession. They're not for me to tell them X, Y, Z and treat them, I'm not saying we're going to treat them like this, but treat them almost like a slave or an extension of yourself. Yes, they are an extension of yourself because they're connected, but when Elijah was young and he didn't like football, I was like, oh my God, what's going on? This ain't the way. Like, what do you mean you don't like football? I took him to training, he started crying at the ball, and I was just like, do you know who we are? Like, you can't. Now relax, I had a call with my cousin, he's like, Els, he's at that age where, came back 5 years later, his mum's calling me. He wants to play football, So let them be who they need to be, guide them, and through guiding them it is, if you know they're going to touch the fire, don't let them touch the fire. But it's not for you to make them be carbon copies of what you think they should be, because that's just not going to work. They're going to rebel, they're going to do what they're going to do, because they got their own mind, their own senses, their own intelligence to see and interact with the world. Otherwise, what is the sense? Do you get what I'm saying?
I think one of the other things sort of that I'd add to that, because I agree with what you're saying, is that we also need to accept that we live in a society where people feel that they shouldn't get things wrong. And people are afraid to get things wrong, and we come from this assumption that when you have a child, you know what you're doing. And we, particularly people like us, we're already in a position where we feel less than. Or, sorry, let me take that back. We're made to feel less than. We ourselves are not, but we're made to feel less than. And so to fail, even when everybody's in a job, you feel that you have to work twice as hard to get the same as somebody else that doesn't look like us. That's the same in parenting also. Because I see the parents when they come in, and I see when they're parents that look like us, and they're coming to school, they're already vexed before they get to the gate. So literally my job, and because they come with that annoyance almost, I wanna put it like that, and a sense of frustration and things like that. When they come through the gate, my first job is to sit them down, and my first question is, how are you? I'm not talking about the kid, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about how you are. Because the thing about it is, my job is to de-escalate that situation before we even talk about the kid. Because otherwise the frustration and the anger of being called to school, whether it's because you're now losing money and you still got bills to pay, or it's because that you're vexed because this is the second time in a week and you told the kid the same thing 5 minutes ago to stop, I don't know, whatever it is. But we have to, and I think people have said it, give ourselves grace. Just because your kid makes a mistake doesn't mean you're a bad parent. Just because you don't get something right the first time, they're people, they're not sort of like a one-dimensional thing. There are many dimensions to them, and it may take 5 or 6, 7, 8, 20 times for them to get something, but once they get it, they've got it. And sometimes them not getting it is not even about them, it's a reflection of you, because there's something that God or higher power wants you to get. And then they're all individuals as well, so you can't parent each kid the same. And any parent will tell you that. They're all different, their own little people, so give yourself grace on that. If you get it wrong with one, that same thing may work for the other one. And also, there's always the one that you find a difficulty raising. That's the one that most reflects you, the things about you. There's always that one. And that one is the one that is telling you you need to go and work on you, because once you get you right, the relationship with that one gels perfectly. So that's what you really need to do.
Before you finish, I just want to say, when you're talking to your child, don't stand over a child.
Yeah.
Don't talk down to the child. Bring yourself down to a level where they're eye to eye with you, because it is such a powerful thing to talk to a child face to face.
Yes.
They hear you, they see you, they recognize you, but when you're up here, you're a monster to that child, and you don't want to hear what you gotta say.
And if I could just add one thing, also learn to have conversations with your child, because when you have conversations at home, it means they can articulate how to disagree with someone correctly. So they have a voice, they can challenge, but because they do it respectfully, they also will be respected, and that becomes their norm, that they go out, they expect respect because they give respect. And also it creates a vocabulary that enables them to challenge effectively.
Yes. Thank you. So 1 second to Amy, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Oh, and I was gonna just add to like all the wonderful things that have been said is that what I have learned for myself is to apologize to my children.
Yes.
I have apologized to my children many times, and I said my intention was good, but the outcome might not have been so good. My intention was to help you because I love you, but the outcome might have hurt you, and I'm sorry. And what it does is it teaches, what I think it's taught my children is, number one, it's okay to apologize, right?
Yeah.
Because we live in a day and age and time where apologizing is beneath me, right? But it's teaching, and it also teaches you to be accountable for yourself and the things you create in the world. And so it teaches them accountability by showing you're accountable for what you've done. And it also teaches them about intention, because we can have a good intention, but the outcome kind of goes sideways. And so I apologize to my children all the time. We're driving down the road, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I really did my best. I showed up in the biggest, fullest way I could. And I love you. I hope you know I love you. And I wouldn't do now what I did then. I wouldn't do that. But I didn't know that. I did the best I could for who I was at that time and for what I knew. But as I grew and I changed, you grew with me. And so thank you, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry goes a long way, and maybe it will help lessen the amount of time they'll have on the therapist's couch venting about what the mother did at 35.
By the way, I do online as well now. So I have worked in America and Canada. I've never been there. I've not been there, but.
So I just want to say a big thank you for everyone for showing up. It was a lovely discussion, and I'd like you all to leave with the thought that children need hugs.
Oh yes,
definitely.
too.
And adults too. So when you hug, you're getting it as well. And I love you. They need that. They need to hear that. Otherwise, they grow up with adults looking for other people to tell them that they're loved. So hugs and love. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. It was really an eye-opener as well. I enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you so much.